Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. David.
Good to have you back after 2 weeks of break. Happy Easter. Felices Pascuas a todos. You see a candle. I asked Justin to light the candle on the other end. The candle is quite significant because it shows that we are starting a new story in Belizean studies. First, we looked at our very foundational topic on how Belize got its name. After reflecting a bit on why study Belizean studies with the writings of Sister Barbara Flores and Ines Sanchez, that kind of moved us to the foundation of how Belize got its name. And it was kind of an overview of the whole Belizean story. The Mayan heritage, the British occupation, the Spanish influence, the Maya, and the stories of newcomers like the enslaved Africans. From there, we moved into the story of the Mayas, the forefathers and mothers that kind of established a kind of an epic civilization, which more and more as archaeologists and historians discover and unearth remains, we're better able to put the pieces together and see how the Mayas kind of are the equivalent of the Greeks in civilization, no? How the Mayas built a mighty civilization that because of this interruption with Spanish contact, we have not really been able to see the magnificence, the real magnificence of such a civilization. But more and more, we are putting pieces together. So we kind of spent quite a bit on the Mayan civilization and crowned it with the story of the Popol Vuh that was so popularized in the lowlands as well. That led us to the post-classic civilization and the rise of certain Mayan sites on the coast, which kind of survived until the Spanish conquest, European conquest. So, which brings us to another story, which was the contact of the Spaniards and the attempt to colonize, to occupy this part of the Americas, Little Belize, no? And with the story of the Tipu and resistance of the mountains, or in the mountains, beyond the mountains, Tipu, the cattail rush, the land of the cattail rush, which was a symbol of resistance and authority. We saw how for years through the 1600s, the 15 and 1600s up to 1697, when the last bastion of Mayan resistance, Tayasal, came to an end, we saw how Tipu and all these Franciscan trails kind of rose up to defend the right to a homeland. So that was the story of Tipu, one of resistance and a dignity, an effort to uphold the dignity of every man and woman who has a right to a homeland. So that kind of ended the 12th week in our semester. Now we have kind of cover the heart of Mayan of Belizean history. We start a new story today, and that's the reason we have the candle, because it's a sacred moment. We are going to relive the story of how the same inability, that the same failure of Spanish occupation opened the way to British colonization. And that's the reason why today we are teaching, we are learning. Our official language is English. And that's why Belize ended as a British colony, unlike our neighbors in the Americas who were a part of the Spanish Empire. So Mr. Giovanni will walk you through the story of British colonization in three seminars. Our seminar today will kind of give you the overall picture of why colonization happened in the Americas. What was the driving force for the Europeans to eventually reach the Americas, and for some a kind of we may say it by chance or some kind of luck, Columbus ended up discovering, in quotes, a land that was not really what he thought it was originally, the East, Japan and China, which the Iberian Peninsula with Spain and Portugal were trying to find a new route that would outcompete the other traders, like the Muslims who had controlled the land routes to the east. So that will be the first lecture, and the reason why we have Spain and Portugal being the two Catholic powers that got the blessing of Pope Alexander the Eighth, who divided
the sixth, Mr. Dave.
the sixth, sorry. Oh, Mr.
Yeah.
Giovanni, you're there. I'm waiting for you.
Yes,
Where,
I just, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm still getting my PowerPoint.
Okay. Mr. Giovanni is here, which the Pope Alexander the Sixth kind of divided this whole quest, west being for Spain and east for Portugal. So where does Britain come in? How come we end up being a British colony and all the Caribbean, most of the Caribbean being British ex-colonies, and eventually we have a few Dutch territories and French territories. So where do these countries come? And we will see the story of piracy, how these countries made use of piracy to be able to get a cut of the pie. So this is the story of Belize. Remember when we said the Spanish couldn't really afford to have all this land under control, because they had, by the 1700s, the 1600s, sorry, late 1600s, they were already having this headache with pirates looting and attacking the forts like Bacalar and in Honduras, right? So they had another problem in their backyard. So all of this opened the way to British occupation. Then in the next episode on Wednesday, Mr. Giovanni will touch on constitutional development, how despite all the treaties, England eventually managed to gain control and governance over this part of the world. And then in the last episode, he will touch a bit on all these treaties that led to the territorial dispute with Guatemala and a consolidation of the British over Belize, despite the fact that it was under British domination in a way, the Americas, no? And it will take us, he will take us all the way to the 1859 Anglo Treaty, Anglo-Guatemalan Treaty. That's the basis of the dispute in a way, no? So all of this to bring you to the dispute and the current situation with the dispute at the International Court of Justice. And I hope that we will get somebody from Foreign Department, Foreign Affairs, who will tell us what is the state of the mediation with the ICJ. So I will leave you now with Mr. Pinelo. I'm sure he will give us a few minutes after the lecture for you to ask your questions. Mr. Giovanni.
All right. Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, let me see. Can you get to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right, good. All right, let me see how I can. Okay. I guess let me see. You have in terms of my screen. What do you see? I am not certain I've done this correctly.
We see a calendar.
Okay,
Some
good.
kind of calendar. I don't know if it's a calendar, but CABFE.
All right. Okay, let me see if I go full on the PowerPoint. All right, there we go. All right, so everybody gets to see that screen. I'm just trying to resize my screen so that I can at least get to see most of you as I carry on the presentation. Yeah, actually, this is a game, and I normally like to begin my classes with an activity. And as you can see on the chart, I have there's six charts, and I'd like one of you to select a number, any number from any of the charts, and let me see if I guess what you selected. To do that, I am not looking at my screen at this point in terms of sharing the chat. So somebody who wants to pick a number, you go, or actually you write it down. If you have a piece of paper with you, I'd like that you write down a number. It's any number between, we could go from 0 to, let's do it to 100. And so you write down your number. You can, we'll do 3 of you only. And this is as a means of introducing this topic on colonization. All right, so somebody has their number. Do not show it on your screen as yet. And okay, so who's going to volunteer to respond in this instance? All I want you to tell me is in which of the squares your number can be found.
E.
All right, G, somebody, all right, Giancarlo is saying that his number is found in the box with the letter E. Okay, so Giancarlo, it can be found in E. Can it be found in another of the squares?
Yes, sir.
Which one? Which one?
So far I've seen is D and C
It's also in B and in C.
and in B.
B as in the busy bee.
B,
So B, C, and E.
yeah,
Correct?
B and D, yeah.
B, C, and
Dog, D.
D. Okay, D, C, and E. Correcto? Yeah?
B
So
as in B, C as in cat, and D as in dog.
B, C, D. All right, B, C, D. B, C, D. The number that you are looking at is the age that you had when you started high school. I think you were 14 years old.
No, sir.
It's not 14?
No, sir.
B, C, and D, 1, 4. It's not there? That's what you told me, right? B, C, and D.
Yes, but I am not seeing that same number. It's not 14.
You did not write the numeral 14 on your paper? Or you're changing it on me now?
No,
Mister.
sir. I chose 46, and 46 are in the four of them.
So you chose 46. So you were telling me a lie. Because you
No,
said B, C, and D.
I said it's in the letter E, B,
Mm-hmm.
and D.
Yeah, but I heard B, C, and D. But that's all right, Giancarlo. Don't worry. I know I can get I'll get you on the other one. All right, somebody, I think it was Christy who was,
Yeah.
go ahead. All right, so you selected already.
Yeah.
We will need to see you, Christy. We will need to see you, not right now. If you don't, all right, you wrote down the number?
Yes.
Good, don't show it yet. Just tell me in which boxes is that letter located.
It's in the box A
It's in box A, okay.
and box C
And box C, okay. Only in those two?
and box E.
And box E. All right, that's the number of weeks in a year.
I think so.
Yeah? Or were you thinking about a shilling, which has the queen's head, and if you double the shilling, sorry, if you turn the shilling around, it will be 52.
Yes, that's correct.
You want to show your classmates that that is the number you had written down?
Yeah, it's right here.
You see, Giancarlo?
Brujería, brujería. Quémenlo, quémenlo.
All right, one more.
Maestro, since
12.
the beginning
Huh?
46, you didn't choose it.
One more. Okay, it is found in C, F, B, and D.
C, F, B, and D.
Yes, for C, F, B, and D.
Okay. Yeah, that's the age you think you have, but you're not 15 years old. You want to show your number? I know you selected 15. Don't change it on us like Giancarlo did.
I selected 63.
You sure?
Yep.
See, I see you are writing it down now.
No, I like the number 9. That's why I selected 69. It's a hard number to choose.
I see. Good. So you see, there's nothing with brujeria in this.
Maestro, no le funciona la brujería, maestro.
Aha, then you see, this is where colonialism, and I want to use this as the springboard to understanding the concept that I wanted to bring out. All right, the idea of how we view certain things when we are not aware of the background to it. This is the way, let me start my video here. This is the way that we ourselves have been taught to believe about each other. That is one of the legacies of colonialism, where when you don't know what it is that you're doing, you take on the you take on an excuse, or you find a way of explaining what you don't know in evil terms. Colonialism is one such concept, one such activity, one of those historical things that continues to pervade our society today. There's a trick to doing these. There's a trick to doing these cards, and so I want to ask, how many of you would like to know how it is done? Everyone, you would all like to know how it is done?
Yes, mister.
Yes. Okay. Can you keep a secret?
Yes,
Yes.
mister.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss.
Okay. Me too. I too can keep the secret, so I'm going to keep it a secret. One of these days, I'm going to explain to you how it is done. Maybe at the end of this week. See, and now you're going to be more suspicious about what we are doing. True? So anyway, let me carry on. Let me see if this will help me with the slide. Okay, that's a blank, I think. And here we go. All right. Um, I am certain that you have seen this type of a chart before. I like to use this chart because it highlights some of the things that we take for granted. We think that we live in a civilized society. We like to pounce on the word civilization, and we tend to demean other people. But what in reality is a civilization? What in reality has happened around the world? Every group has at some point in time managed to reach a level of development that can be defined as a civilization. And this from early on was based on agriculture. Do you eat to think, or do you think to eat? Do you eat to think, or do you think to eat? What is the answer to that? What is your answer to that? There is no wrong answer. And the reason I bring this out is because, as you will see later on, the concept of colonization will entail many of these elements. The concept of colonization, as we will look through in terms of defining it, will focus on systems of governance. It will focus on how armies were able to carry out this conquest. When I logged on, I heard Mr. David reminding you of that early period in Europe when the Spaniards took back what is now the entire Iberian Peninsula. When the Portuguese assisted, again, they had to feed their army. And it was we could term it as a means of recolonization of southern Spain after the Muslims, after the Arabs had taken over. Someone had a comment or a question? Similarly, across the world, if you are familiar with the Maya civilization, we know that there were times that, for example, Tikal was conquered by the Maya at Caracol. We know that Calakmul also went to war. What was it all about? How did they confront each other? What was the main reason? What drove these societies to move beyond the areas where they were and to establish some degree of what we would now term colonization? These are some of the concepts that you have to understand. All right. So as I look at this other screen, and by the way, because I might not be able to see all of you, because I'm resizing my screen unless I'm trying to log on my phone so I can then see you and then we can just deal with the screen proper. Um, what are some of the reasons why people would eventually move out of their areas? Right? The biggest one we're all aware of is, as we can see, all right, let me just, there I go. Okay. Yeah, the question is why explore? Why explore? What is it that there is in every society that has led people, let me just, that has led people to move from one place to another? I heard Mr. David talking to you about the Silk Road, the opening up of the Bering Strait. We focus a lot on the early European part because those are the records that are readily available for us on how people moved from one area to another. What were those personal quests? You remember when you were in primary school, your teacher may have taught you the song about the bear went over the mountain. Why did the bear go over the mountain? To see what he could see. And what did the bear see? And I'm talking B-E-A-R. I see some of you smiling when I said the word beer. Right? What did the sorry, I just did something here that I shouldn't have. What did the bear see? The bear saw the other side of the mountain. The same story applies when you consider that Europeans, Columbus, by coming over, and we hear people talking about discovering the Americas, we realize that that is not entirely so because there were already other people who were living here. So the reasons why people move from one place or another, as this slide shows, are various. I think my screen moves a little slow. So eventually, having seen, and I know that you will have done some of this more in depth, having seen how Columbus and later on his followers come to the new world and they get this approval from Pope Alexander VI, whose original name was Rodrigo de Borgia, himself a Spaniard, grants the Intercaetera, one of the papal bulls that allows Spain to conquer, to claim, actually, to claim. And by claiming, it also means conquering, whether through pacificación, as Fray Bartolomé de las Casas would do, or by conquest, as people like Hernán Cortés and Pedro de Alvarado carried out the mass genocide of the Aztecs, of the Maya, in most of our areas. Belize, as historians like R.A. Humphreys indicate, retained a level of sanctity, became like a sanctuary, because what became known as a hollow frontier uh, became the refuge for many people, for many of the Maya people. And that area is today what we call northern Belize, linking it with northern Petén. And so where we are in this section of the territory was, to some degree or another, exempt from the harsh cruelty, from the hardships that the conquest brought with it. This concept of the contact between cultures, where colonization was propelled because of trade. It was propelled through religious missions, and it was propelled through a military conquest. These are three key factors And from there, we can look at the economics of it, which is trade. We can look at the cultural aspects, which includes religion. And we can look at the military aspect of the control of resources. Colonization in and of itself is in reference to the control of resources, and most of the time it is for the benefit of a few. So here on this slide, we're now moving into the Americas. I don't know if you have any questions. If you do, please ask, because I'm kind of moving fast. I know you've covered some of this material already. All right. The act of taking control of an area or a country, according to the Oxford Dictionary, what one word describes that process? Sometimes using force, sometimes just sending other people to take control. One word. Begins with a big C.
Conquest.
Colonialism.
Conquest, colonization. Conquest, colonization. That's what we're dealing with. And so we will see then how by conquest it would lead to challenges and it would bring in colonization. And in this case, because you have already covered the Spanish presence in the area, we're going to be looking at how the British, and I know that in some instances we'll be able to bring out, I'll bring out some of the other aspects of this concept of colonization. Why colonize? Why do groups? Why have groups? Even today, colonization continues. The question is why? ¿Por qué? Anyone?
Yes, sir. Because by colonizing, it gives the country more power to find in that country the resources that cannot be found in their own country. That's why they
Okay.
go and capture or take control over an area like what is the U.S. doing right now with different parts of the country.
Okay. Very good answer and very good example. The US in particular is, can you name another country in today's time that is doing the same, exercising a level of colonization?
The Guatemalan dispute.
The Guatemalans, how are they exercising a level of colonization?
I mean, the dispute between Belize and Guatemala,
Yes,
in the
but in
way,
terms,
the land, just in general, the whole land dispute where they want to make Belize theirs. Making it for any reason, even though
okay,
if it's not like conquest, it's not like, forcing their way in, right? But, legally.
okay. Yeah, that can be seen the way that they encourage their people to come across the frontier can be seen as a strategy for colonization.
And probably following on Kumar's example, the situation at the Sarstone, no?
Okay. Yep. Yep. Even though by virtue of a treaty, and I guess we'll discuss that later on, by virtue of a treaty, that Sarstone Island has to be excluded. Yeah. Another clear example of colonization in Belize, or in the world, one that we do not see, but is happening, and it's happening silently. They don't send their army, they don't send foreign
Mister,
aid. Yes.
would it be the spread of religion?
The spread of religion as a form of colonization.
Yes.
Yeah, that can be one. Definitely, that is one.
How about immigrants?
Immigrants, but why are immigrants on the move? Are they planning on taking control of a territory? Yes, they lack resources in their country, But remember that colonization is a planned activity. It is propelled by interest groups. It is encouraged by individuals who, working together, have something to gain. Religion is one of those, especially, and as biased as I may be, because that's in our nature, but as biased as I may be, and excuse me if anyone sees it differently, but you notice that most of the new religions, the new groups that are emerging, who sponsors them and what is their purpose? So when you say migrants coming into Belize, how much of a planned colonization effort is there? Just something to think about. Yes, Winston.
I think it might be the Chinese because the Chinese themselves they in here they also bring more people from the Chinese and buy our land to live in here. This is a process of colonizing slowly, but they're colonizing, and also the Mennonites. They also do the same process by colonizing in a place like what the Mennonites are doing. They gain a lot of money in Belize, and now they went to I think Panama to colonize there.
They have expanded, the Mennonites in particular have expanded out of the areas that were originally granted to them in 1958, right? Um, and yes, even in other countries, they have always been there. I met a Mennonite one time ago, and he told me he was born in Canada. He has relatives in Chihuahua, Mexico. He lives in Belize, and he has other relatives, including children, including his own children in Peru. And guess what? He has all 5 passports.
A lot of Mennonites are going back to Peru, sir, because of well, I saw a YouTube video that they're moving to like a lot of Mennonites going to Peru.
Yeah, there are key opportunities that they are in search of and that they're receiving. So some of the things that you have to bear in mind when we speak about colonization are ideologies. What is it that has propelled colonialism? In modern times, the term communism, the Soviet bloc, was seen as one of those efforts at countries working with each other. And I use the word working with each other loosely, you know, but that was a type of colonization effort. And we see how the USSR and the US uh, entered into what became known as the Cold War, because it was an effort for them to exercise a level of control, and it's a level of control over resources. Migrants coming into our country, our own people going to other countries, is because they are in search of resources. It's because of the ideology, taking it that, okay, en Belize, ¿qué voy a hacer? ¿Cuánto voy a ganar? Can I earn more elsewhere? And so many of our people move out. Do they have a strategy to colonize the territory that they are going into? Is a different matter, right? So that in and of itself is another one. Earlier, Winston and Gian and somebody else mentioned this concept of control, and especially for control of those resources that comes with tangible benefits. By tangible benefits, we speak about things that you can actually see. And yes, it is about power, whether it is economic power or political power. That is one of the things that propels the ideologies of colonization. And in our presentations, we'll be having different terminologies for what is colonization. I am trying to do something here with my screen, with my other screen actually. All right, but that's okay. I think we can deal with it. Okay, so what are some of the things that emerged out of one group moving from an area to another? And generally speaking, sometimes we take these things for granted. As you can see on our slide, what are some of the key things that arose out of colonization? We take it for granted that bananas are native to the Americas. We eat our rice, but we don't really think about where it came from. We enjoy coffee. And a lot of people like say, oh, our elders used to drink coffee. Y nunca se enfermó. But coffee is not originally from this part of the world. Coffee is like Coca-Cola today. Coca-Cola has gone global. Anybody saw that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy? If you saw the movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, what created havoc among that African group? One bottle, an empty bottle of Coca-Cola. Notice that sometimes the colonizing strategy is empty. How many of you young people love to watch MTV? MTV, what is MTV? I see Zina is smiling because you caught up on the pun. True? Empty. Sometimes, sorry Kumar, but sometimes the music that is played on MTV is empty. It doesn't really make sense. Isn't that so? Right? Again, that's a form of colonization, but we don't see it. Because, well, I have a personal bias against some type of music. If I don't understand it, and then I see people I go like, wow, ¿qué pasó? You know? And I'm not pouncing on you, Kumar. I know you love music, and I know that the music you play is music with sense, right?
I mean, music in all is pretty subjective. So.
Yes, that too. And when you analyze it and you understand what it's bringing out, then you begin to appreciate it. One of the evils of colonization is that it did not search to do that type of thing where it would make you appreciate yourself and others. And we see that. See, everybody wants Coca-Cola. But what happens? What are some of the side effects of Coca-Cola? You've seen it on Facebook, true? When Gian can't start his car and he checks the battery, what's wrong with the battery, Gian?
Dead, sir.
Dead. Why? All that copper sulfate on the battery poles. And what do you put? Coca-Cola. Imagine what it does into your stomach. I'm guilty of taking Coca-Cola now and again. But likewise, cattle, pigs, notice some of the things that came from the old world. Sorry?
Pero da más energía.
I don't know about that. Yeah? But at the same time that it gives you more energy, you're spending on something that you don't need.
You crash.
And who is gaining out of it? La Compañía. And in Belize, Bowen and Bowen. Right? But Bowen and Bowen has to pay a premium to Coca-Cola Global because that's part of the deal. Right? So many things came with colonization, European colonization into the New World, including diseases. Look at COVID-19, SARS-CoV-19. Similarly, it came from elsewhere. Trump is blaming our Asian brothers and sisters. Do we really know where it came from and why? Different story, no? But sometimes we take it for granted. And so you can think about other tangible and intangible things that have come about with colonization. By the same token, the Americas, as we call it, after Amerigo Vespucci, have also given things to the rest of the world. Okay, albeit in the name of colonization. In Europe, nobody knew about avocados. Today, everybody enjoys palta, which is the other name for avocado. And by the way, aguacate is actually, or if you listen to it, avocado and aguacate is actually from the Nahuatl, aguacatl. True? As if Gian is having fun time, food time, true? Likewise, cocoa. So now, Gian, I just played on your mind there. See, look at some of the things that came from the New World. Corn today is a product that is one of those crops that is produced all over the world, and it feeds millions of people. Look at the tomato. You people go to the Chinese and you're buying your French fries and you enjoy it with Italian tomato sauce. Did you know that the Italians call the tomato the devil's food? Because of its red color. Notice how colonization also plays with your mind. And it played with European minds. In this, by the same token, when you think about potato, we like our Irish potato. Well, it's known as Irish potato because the potato which came from the Incas of South America was used to help alleviate the starvation that was going on in Ireland. Yet, even the monarchs at the time called the potato the devil's food because it grew under the ground. Where is hell? Ayabaho. Notice how ideologies play a role. The interpretation of concepts come about as part of this colonization. And there were many others. In fact, the Americans also gave the world tobacco. And as we all know, tobacco is not one of the healthiest of crops now. But it gave them that. You people celebrate Thanksgiving. Talk about the turkey. And the pilgrim story is not the pilgrims and Thanksgiving in the US. Boy, do we need to find out what really went on. Imagine who saved who and for what reason. Likewise, you enjoy your vanilla ice cream. You enjoy your Swiss chocolate. Any chocolate made in Switzerland is the best, they say. But who are the masters? Who are the agronomists? Who are the scientists that were able to master the crop known as cacao? It's the Maya. But we don't hear Maya cacao. Well, now in Belize, yes, because we've gone into a paradigm shift where we, and I say we in general, and in particular when I was working at the National Institute of Culture and History, we have been pushing for people to understand that we need not be ashamed. Why have to rely on Swiss chocolate when cacao comes from this side of the world? Again, the concepts and how these are used against our own people and how we use it against our own selves. When we don't know, we take for granted what we are fed. Don't take for granted what I'm telling you. Read it yourself. Find out. All right. And there are many other tangible and intangible resources that propelled Europeans to come to the New World. The Spanish capitalized on it. The English would also find a way to deal with it. All right. There are other words, canoa, barbacoa, huracan. And if you notice the symbol for hurricane, what's the symbol for hurricane? It's a circle with two wings like a fan, true? That is a zemi. The Arawaks, the Taino had a symbol for the god of the wind, and they call the god of the wind Huracan. See where the word hurricane comes from? It's from the New World. We talk about barbacoa. Okay, the same thing applies. So there are a number of things that we take for granted, and we believe that it came from somewhere else, but in reality, it's that colonizing mission that has diminished the contribution of our peoples to the world in general, to globalization. And okay, so now we're going to move. Any questions, any comments, anyone? If none, then we're going to
Yes, I
move.
have a question.
Yes,
I was
please do.
thinking way far from this world to the other world about Africa.
Uh-huh.
That there is a lot of poverty, and I don't think it has been colonized. Like
Africa has not been
Africa,
colonized.
yeah, it was, yeah, because they don't have, a lot of technology or any innovation. So I was thinking,
Okay.
why why was that? And I was just curious. It's I'm curious about that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a country that has a lot of resources to be exploited,
Yeah, the African
Yeah,
continent has a lot of resources, and yet the state of poverty that we see. But that is what CNN wants us to see. That is what BBC News wants us to see. That's what ABC and NBC and CBS and all these Western channels show you. Have you had the opportunity of looking at Al Jazeera, the news channel?
no, I haven't.
Okay, so I'm going to advise you to take the
Okay,
time to search for Al Jazeera.
okay.
Aljazeera, Al Jazeera. What we see, and look, in the 1880s, from the 1860s onwards, Africa was colonized. All of Africa was colonized, and you rightly pointed it out that
Yes,
Africa as a
it was
continent,
colonized. Yes, it was
yes,
colonized.
yes, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
colonized. Belgium, King Leopold of Belgium, they met there. The Germans took over a section of Africa. The Spanish controlled a portion of Africa. England controlled another portion, particularly places like Egypt. The West Coast, places today that go by the name of Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, Senegambia, Senegal, these were controlled by Portugal, by France. When you look at football, a lot of those football players that come from Africa have an African name or a Christian name with an African surname. Many of them play for the French national team. Boateng, who plays for Germany, is a black, quote unquote. He's a black man. His mother was German. His father was African. There's several channels that you can look at, but let me tell you that Africa is not as undeveloped as we would think. Walter Rodney, who did his thesis on colonization and British colonization, he wrote his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And yes, Africa was colonized. British colonization extended all over the world. But you'd be surprised. You think Africa consists only of black people, quote unquote? No. They have blue-eyed people. They have blonde people, and they're originally African. I wish that one of these days I could share with you, because I taught African civilization um, from the early to the 20th century at UB. And when you look at Africa, the amount of what they have, very, uh, it shows you the other side. Yes, Shamira.
Yes, I would believe what you say that in the news you see a lot of things that are not true because when I went to Brazil, you know, in the
Mhm.
TV you would see like there were a lot of, you know, colored people, and when I went there was not many. I didn't
Okay,
see, I just see like 3 or 4, you know,
okay. Where were
people.
you at?
I went to Rio de Janeiro. I went to Sao Paulo and I didn't see any, you know, any, you
Okay.
know.
Did you get to go to the favelas?
Yes, I went to the favelas and I didn't see either.
Wow.
I was surprised, you
That's
know. That's why I believe what you say that, you know, the news, you know, you see a lot of things that are not
yes,
true.
you that is right. Even yeah, when we go on tours in other countries, like sometimes they'll take you to the places they want you to see, a donde se ve bonito, and that is one of the masquerades of colonization. In fact, even the leaders do that. Franz Fanon, his well-known book, The Wretched of the Earth, also wrote a book entitled Black Faces, White Masks. Even here in Belize, we have, look at, take the famous Michael Jackson. Remember what he did to himself? And likewise, even our Maya brothers and sisters. I often look through Facebook. I know of one person who has Maya mestizo origins, but the amount of Barbie, the Barbie syndrome has caught her. And every week she has a program where she's turning up her eyelashes and I need not say anymore. You see, colonization, even to this day, continues to impact us in ways that you and I take for granted as being normal. So Africa, like the New World, colonization extended, and a lot of the European countries did that. Ethiopia was controlled by Italy. Like I said, the British controlled the region of Egypt. Why do you think that Israel continues to fight with Palestine, the areas of Jordan, all these places? People they war against each other, but who are behind the scenes? Where do they get these weapons from? Remember, conquest as one of the things about colonization. What is the agenda? They have a strategy. So a lot of these things do come along. And how did the British become much more involved in colonization? As this timeline shows you, and I wanted to focus on the 1577 part. This guy, Humphrey Gilbert, he was a brother of Walter Raleigh, the famous pirate Walter Raleigh. He wrote a treatise which is entitled A Discourse on how Her Majesty, and he's talking about Queen Elizabeth I, how Her Majesty may meet with and annoy the King of Spain. Imagine, that's the title. In this, he was explaining what gave the British a right to challenge the Spanish to have access to resources in the New World. Yes, Shamira, somebody had something to say? So this treatise, a discourse on how Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I may meet and annoy the King of Spain, is how do you challenge him? And he wrote about British rights to challenge Spain in control of the New World. And from that time, the English fought, and I say English and the British, I use those terms interchangeably. They sought ways to come to the New World. and to establish themselves, to assert some level of gainance in terms of what we now call colonization. They did not call it colonization as such. Yes, they said we are entitled to set up colonies, but colonies, the definition of colonies was different then than it is now, but it has an agenda behind it. And so what were some of the things then that the people who came, what are some of the things that they had to contend with? Geography. What made it possible for the British to challenge Spain and to establish a level of colonization within the region of Belize? As you can see from the slide, the geographic layout, the landscape of Belize was critical. If you've been out to the sea, if you've been to San Pedro, to Kikak, to Kichapu, if you've been to the Blue Hole, to Half Moon Key, the Sapodilla and Ranguana range of keys, Southwater, all of these, notice that the geographic condition there does not allow for large ships. The large Spanish galleons, those huge ships that were taking goods from the mainland to Spain, was not there. And so the geographic landscape, the reefs, the keys, the shallow waters made it impossible for the Spanish to exercise a degree of control through their navy in the region of Belize. Likewise, when you look at the rivers, these were not conducive to the Spanish to really establish themselves in the area. They tried it. A couple of years ago, there was a cemetery that was found just outside of Sand Hill. I don't know what the Department of Archaeology has done, but I would think that it is an important thing to carry on the research, and hopefully we can determine who were buried there. Likewise, on the islands of San Pedro, and if you saw just over the weekend, somebody discovered, quote unquote, discovered a pot that dates to what, over 800 years ago, from what has been determined. Just around, okay, I'll mention some more as we go along, because I think I have those in the slide. Today we continue to, the heat. It's 102 degrees out in the shade these days. Europeans were not used to this type of weather. And in fact, the environment, and I'll deviate a little bit here, the environment had an impact on whether the Spanish stayed or not. The mosquitoes, the unknown animals to them made it difficult for the Spanish to fully establish themselves in the region of Belize. So technically, it becomes a no man's land in that sense, that there weren't too many. The encomiendas that were set up in Belize, as Mr. David would have told you, existed at places like Lamanay. And if you have been taken to Tipu, again, these are some of those areas that you can see how the Spanish try to establish themselves, but it was difficult for them to retain a level of control there. Mr. Dave, was there something? Again, when you consider that the amount of resources, when the Spanish came, they were looking to get rich quick. That's what they were looking for. We don't, even today, what do? We hurry go buy Fantasy 5. You buy your Bolido. You buy your, what is it, Scratch? Because we want to get rich quick. Europeans back in the days were looking for the same thing. They didn't want to do the hard work. They did not wish to do the hard work, and they could not find gold and silver, which were actually two of the precious metals that would get them wealthy overnight. They can't find that in Belize, so what the heck are we going to do here? And so again, the lack a steady Spanish presence allowed for the territory that today we know as Belize to become open, quote unquote. You will ask, where were the Maya? True, the Maya were still around. I'm certain that you would have seen some of the names that Captain Francisco Perez wrote down in that matricula, in that census in 1655 when he came towards the region of Tipu. 1655, the same time the British are conquering Jamaica. The Spanish are taking a census of the people in the region of Belize. So the indigenous population existed here and they fought back. Today, when we sing that song that says, I call it a song, with all due respect, our fathers, the Baymen, valiant and bold, drove back the invaders. Really? Where do you put the Maya? The Maya fought against the Europeans in this territory, but our national anthem does not recognize them. Notice the ideology. We came to a land where there were no Maya. Nobody was living here. Therefore, it is ours. Colonization. And its ideology. Terra nullius. Empty land. Well, that's an empty lie. Because today we know the archival sources show us that the Maya were around here at the time that both the Spanish and later when the British came. This has not been an empty land. That is a myth. That is a lie. That's what the history books, most of the history books tell us. Who wrote those books? The African proverb says it well. Until the lion tells his side of the story, the hunter will always have been the victor. So these are some of the things that colonization has done and impacted on us. And that is also the way how Europeans managed to exert a level of control here. In terms of the Spaniards in the area, mercantilism became the main thing, trade among themselves. Spain became wealthy. As we can see there, Ferdinand and Isabella and their descendants counting how much silver and gold they were getting from different areas of the Americas. Notice the trading routes from this map. And if you note the territory that today we call Belize, como que nada estaba sucediendo. So mercantilism as a form of trade. Today we hear on the radio, buy in Belize, build Belize. Buy in Belize, build Belize. The merchants are happy that COVID came in. Ya no corremos a Melchor ni a Chetumal. But the contraband trade is still thriving. Yeah? Yes, Mr. Dave.
We have run out of time, Mr. Giovanni. I don't know if you would like to wrap it up and we continue on Wednesday.
Sure. Let me see what's the next slide that I have. Okay, so this is going to be my last slide. And so then if you consider what had been going on and around the globe, and then with zero in, notice that I started generally, and now I'm zeroing in on Belize. And so the pink shades on this map, on this slide, is where the British would find a way, especially after they conquered Jamaica. This is where they found themselves a center of operation, became Jamaica. And from there, they began to send incursions. They began to incurse. They began to find ways of establishing, of setting up and establishing colonies in the Americas, in the mainland, sorry, on the mainland. And Belize, as you can see, was perhaps the best that they could find then. Today we call it the jewel. No? It's still the best. All right, so I'm going to stop here and let's listen to some questions. And we still have a few minutes, Mr. Dave? Or you said we run out of time?
Yeah, couple of minutes for questions.
I think one of the things that you can also do as you begin to digest this introductory section is that you can also send in your questions to Mr. Dave, then he can forward it to me, and we work from there. But I know you have questions, you have comments. Too many of you are silent. Yes, Winston.
Mr. Giovanni, what would be the difference between imperialism and colonization?
Imperialism and colonization. There's not much of a difference. There is not much of a difference. It is the colonies that create the empire. It was because of the resources that came out of the different colonies that would lead to the creation of an empire. All right? All these European nations were pockets. When you look at European history, Italy was divided into a lot of smaller states, what we call city-states. The same applied for Spain. Spain consisted of 5 areas. 6 because Portugal was one of them, and then it became independent. But the areas of Valencia, the areas like Navarra, Catalunya, when you look at Spanish news, los catalanes están tratando de independizarse from Spain. That's why it was King Ferdinand of Aragon who married Isabella of Castile. The Spanish we speak here is Castellano. But the Barça, those of you who follow Barça, if you listen to the Catalan language, Catalunya, yet that is Spain, right? The Gallego, the language that the Spanish that we speak is a mixture from the other 4 regions. And I should actually say 5 because when you consider the islands of Tenerife, right? And if you consider Tenerife and Tornef Islands in Belize, and Tenerife in Spain, makes you wonder, true? Another question or comment? I know you're eager to go on to your next class. Any other? So when you look at colonization, it's the colonies that create the empire. It's a buildup of. For example, Belize district, the country of Belize would be nothing if the districts were to begin to disintegrate. If Cayo was to say we're going to become independent from Belize, then Belize becomes smaller. But because all the districts retain a level of cohesion, then we have a country. Same, it's a similar parallel to from colonies building up an empire. The same thing occurred with the Maya. And in fact, the theories continue there. Were they city-states, independent city-states, or were they an empire, a larger area? Any other query? All right, if none, then I guess we're going to call it off for the moment. But whatever queries you may have, please forward it to Mr. Dave, and then he can forward it to me so that we can look more at it. Sorry that I was not seeing your. I didn't get to log on to your chat, into the chat box, but I guess I'll be able to read it and then follow up in that.
Thank you
right?
very much, Mr. Giovanni. I guess those people who had written in the chat asked the questions, no? So that was fine. If you have any question, kindly direct it to Justin, and maybe Mr. Giovanni can answer these next class, no? I know there is a comment in the chat that people are eager to learn about Belize as a British colony, but there was a need to recap on the general background so that you could understand the context of British occupation and then colonization. So thank you very much, Mr. Giovanni. I'm sure he's going to deal a bit more on this for next class. And just be reminded that Wednesday after Mr. Giovanni's class, you need to do the test on Moodle in Moodle for the Spanish occupation, the attempts of Spanish occupation. So, Mr. Giovanni, any final words?
I guess not. I guess not. It's just like I said, I like to go back into things so that when we move forward, then we can press much more easily.
Yeah.
And I hope that I have provoked some thought, some more questions in this short presentation.
Yes. Thank you very much. I know, I mean, the time is an hour seems long, but it's really not for a lecture. But we have 2 other lectures, so please connect early so that we can have the full time for these topics. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Mr. Giovanni.
Yeah, we'll see you on Wednesday.
Right.
Good night.